Je m'appelle Damien.
Je m'appelle Trisha. Et je m'appelle Alisa. Notre groupe s'appelle Dio de Vivague French Garden Massimo et nous allons vous aider notre projet French Garden.
I am Alisa and I'm going to start off our presentation for History Landscape Architecture for French Garden. So the French garden, or Jardin à la Française, is a formal style of garden that emerged in France during the 17th century and is characterized by its strict symmetry, geometric layout, and an emphasis on control over nature. There is also a phrase says, landscape is hero, so that is why the French, specifically during the 17th century, they prefer to have a large landscape area compared to a big house, because a big landscape considered as luxury back then. For the historical background, the French formal garden has its roots in the Italian Renaissance garden, which introduced symmetry, classical elements, and heresies to garden design. French designers, most notably André Lenotre, adapted and evolved these principles to create an even more structured and grandiose expression of power and order. The development of the French garden paralleled the rise of absolutist monarchy and was a visual representation of man's dominance over nature and the king's control over his domain. And here are the examples, and as you can see in the pictures, they really love to have a symmetrical order and also structured garden. And here are the obvious key elements that we can find in French garden, which is the central axis and symmetry, and also parterres. For central axis and symmetry, a strong central axis organizes the entire garden layout. The design is mirrored on either side of this axis, emphasizing perfect symmetry, and is often aligned with the central hall or terrace of the chateau. As you can see in the picture, right on top, you can see that it is very symmetrical, and also the layout is in a very mirrored or perfect symmetry, and it is very much aligned with the central hall, or we could call it as our focal point. And for the parterres, you can see on the bottom left ornamental flower beds arranged in symmetrical, often lace-like patterns. Parterre de broderie resembles embroidery filled with colored gravel, clipped boxwood, and flowers, and it is viewed best from above, from balcony or terrace to be specific. As the French really love to show the colorful flowers, they often arrange it in a symmetrical order as well. For the ancient uses in French gardens, they have symbolism and power. Gardens symbolize control over nature and the power of the monarchy or aristocracy. Highly structured, symmetrical layouts reflected order and discipline. The second one, formal design, Jardin à la Française. Geometric shapes, symmetry, axial paths, and central perspectives. For example, Gardens of Versailles by André Lenotre that I just showed you guys earlier. Third, use of parterres and topiary, parterres de broderie, embroidered flower beds with intricate patterns, shrubs and trees shaped into ornamental forms. And lastly, water features, elaborate fountains, reflective pools, and canals serve both decorative and irrigation purposes. And for the modern uses, it also shows relaxation and sustainability. Gardens today are used for personal enjoyment, biodiversity, and sustainability rather than status. And it is also emphasis on low maintenance, climate-adapted plants. Second point is inspiration rather than imitation. Modern gardens may incorporate classical elements like symmetry or parterres, but in a looser and more informal way. And it is also mixed with naturalistic or ecological planting. And lastly, functional and aesthetic design. Gardens often include sitting areas, edible plants like potagers, and multifunctional spaces. And it is greatly used for permaculture principles.
And I'm Trisha. I'm going to continue this presentation. For philosophy, the French garden is a classic and asymmetrical concept of the garden that was applied on a manual man skill in 17th century France. The fruit of a long tradition, it reached its apex with the genius of Louis XIV Principal's gardener André Lenotre, with suggestions such as the garden for the Chevauches of Vaux-le-Chanty. The most common species in French garden is lavender, roses, geraniums, rosemary, thyme, boxwood, salvia, wisteria, cadmium, grasses, and jasmine. For the color palette in French garden, dominated by green, headed lawns and tree, accents of white, purple, and soft pink from flower, common flower, lavender, roses, tulip, and iris, light beige, tan gravel path, white or grey stone from the statues and structures. Sculptor of high ranking, Louis XIV and Versailles. Louis XIV de Versailles commissioned extensive sculptural work for the garden of Versailles to enhance the garden of the place and his own image. The garden are filled with statues of variety figures including mythological character and of course description of the king himself. For the main theme in French garden, mythological figures Apollo, Venus and Neptune. Allegories, justice, victory, times, animal, lion, horses, eagle, loyalty and leaders. Noble figures Louis XIV often depicted as Apollo or sun gods. Roman Empire, symbol of power and authority. Some genres are noble in later period. Metres and style made from marble, bronze or stone. Classic style, elegant, ideals and dramatic.
And I'm Damia. I'm going to continue this presentation with types of French garden in different era. The first one is medieval period in 5th till 15th century. The style is monastic and utilitarian. The purpose is to place the places of prayer and religious meditation. And the second one is the Renaissance in 16th century. In this century, French garden were heavily influenced by Italian Renaissance garden design, particularly those featuring symmetry, perspective, and the use of enclosed spaces. The purpose is to display of power and harmony between architecture and nature. This is the example in this era, the French garden in this era, the Domaine Royal de Château in Gellert. The next one is Baroque in 17th century. The purpose is to demonstrate royal absolutism and control over nature. The fourth one is Enlightenment in 18th century. The transition from strictly formal to mature, naturalistic, and picturesque. This is the example in this era. The fifth one is Romantic and Second Empire in 19th century. The trend is eclecticism and public parks. This is the example. And the last one is 20th century to present modernism and sustainability to more simpler and abstract forms. This is the example in this era. And this is the French garden layout. The example we take is Gardens of Versailles, designed by André Le Notre in 7th century. The style is Jardin à la Francaise, French formal garden. This is the French garden shapes in landscape. The first one is geometric shapes for formal gardens, and the second one is organic shapes for informal or naturalistic gardens, and the third one is symbolic or decorative shapes. For the comparison between French garden and other garden, we can see here that French is more very formal and English is informal. And French garden is the symmetry is stronger than English garden. And for the water use, French garden more use decorative and lush water uses. Thank you. That's all for us.